Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, recently the world has witnessed brutal wars and bloodshed. Nearly 2 years ago, peace was upended in Europe for the first time since World War II. Russia invaded Ukraine, and the entire globe has felt the impact. Food prices and energy prices surged, affecting countries everywhere. Supply chains suffered a hard hit, and the chance for a global war became a terrifying possible reality. Yet, shockingly, Article 99 was not invoked. The same can be said regarding the thousands killed in Yemen, or how the murderous Assad regime of Syria continued to massacre its own people, including through the use of chemical weapons. In each one of these conflicts, and I have other examples, tens, if not hundreds of thousands were killed and millions were displaced. Yet, not once, not even once, has Article 99 of the UN Charter been invoked. Is the war in Ukraine not a threat to international peace and security? Do the millions of displaced Syrians and the children whose corpses were found foaming at the mouth in Douma not symbolize a threat to regional stability? Is watching thousands of Yemeni children die in war while tens of thousands starve not worthy enough to invoke Article 99? Despite the immense global impact of other conflicts and far more pressing threats to international peace and security, Israel's defensive war against Hamas, a designated terrorist organization, was the catalyst for activating Article 99. The irony is that regional stability and the security of both Israelis and Gazans can only be achieved once Hamas is eliminated, not 1 minute before. So the true path to ensure peace is only through supporting Israel's mission, absolutely not to call for a ceasefire. And secondly, distinguished colleagues, for those of you calling for a ceasefire, it is crucial that you remember the facts. On October 6th, there was a ceasefire in place. But on October 7th, Hamas broke the ceasefire with an unprovoked invasion of thousands of Hamas Nazis into Israel. These Hamas terrorists carried out a massacre the likes of which we have not seen since the Holocaust. They raped women and girls, beheaded babies, burned families alive, and took 250 hostages, ranging from infants to the elderly. Following the atrocities of October 7th, Israel committed itself to the elimination of Hamas's capabilities for the sole reason of ensuring that such horrors could never be repeated again. And if Hamas is not destroyed, such horrors will be repeated. Hamas officials have made it clear publicly, time and again, that October 7th was just a rehearsal, and they will continue to carry out atrocities again and again. Hamas is responsible for inhumane terror against Israelis. Hamas is responsible for ruling Gaza with an iron fist, forcing Gazans to live in poverty, deprived of basic human rights. Hamas is responsible for exploiting international aid to fuel their war machine. And calling for a ceasefire is precisely what ensures that this will continue. A ceasefire means that the suffering of all will carry on. A ceasefire cements Hamas's control of Gaza. But even more than that, calling for a ceasefire sends a clear message that Hamas is forgiven for their deliberate atrocities, and Hamas's oppression of Gazans is given a green light by the international community. Hamas, like any other entity, only responds, like any terror entity, only responds when its existence is threatened. And without the military pressure applied on Hamas, no amount of diplomacy can secure the release of hostages. Is this what the Council desires? That Hamas continues its reign of terror forever? That the hostages, among them women and children, never leave Gaza? Hamas won't even permit the Red Cross to visit them. Hamas has a clear script. If you call for a ceasefire, then you are following it. Hamas knows that it cannot defeat Israel on the conventional battlefield. This is why Hamas targets the murders civilians. They seek to terrorize Israelis and drive us out of our homeland in fear. But Hamas's vicious strategy is also to advance the death of many Gazan civilians as well. This is why Hamas hides behind and under the civilian population. This is why they use hospitals for cover and schools as arms catches, including UNRWA schools. Hamas wants to maximize civilian casualties, to co-opt the UN to pressure Israel to cease its fire and allow Hamas to survive and continue its reign of terror. Hamas knows that the more civilian fatalities there are, the more pressure the international community will put on Israel. This is why Hamas also fabricates death tolls, which are taken at face value here, with no real efforts made by the UN to verify them. According to the Hamas Ministry of Health, almost no terrorists have been killed in this war, only women and children. This is the same body that falsely blamed Israel for 500 casualties at Al Ahli Hospital, when the truth is that the number of casualties was drastically lower, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad was the one responsible for the fatalities. I will be very clear, dear colleagues. The number you are basing your discussions on are libelous and distorted, drastically. Hamas has built terror bases inside and underneath medical facilities. This has been proven. They store rockets and assault rifles in children's bedrooms. And just yesterday, Hamas launched 12 rockets at Israel from within a designated humanitarian zone in southern Gaza. Rockets were fired mere meters from the tents of evacuated Gazans. Hamas exploits Gazans as human shields in hopes that civilian casualties will rise and the UN will call for a ceasefire. Do we want to be the actors in the show that Hamas has carefully crafted? It is always easier to pressure the law-abiding democracy as opposed to the terrorists who don't even recognize the existence of international law. But is this the right and just way to ensure security? Of course not. This is Hamas's script of death. Don't agree to be part of it. Please. Hamas is the root cause of the situation in Gaza. Yet there is zero accountability for their evil. Why is Hamas not held fully responsible by the UN and its bodies? Tell Gazans the truth. They have to hear it from you. This is the only way to bring about bottom-up change in Gaza. Dear colleagues, Hamas not only violated the ceasefire on October 7th, Hamas fundamentally violated the recent humanitarian pause. Last week, there was a pause in place. The agreement was clear. For every 10 hostages released, the pause would be extended by 24 hours. Hundreds of aid trucks entered Gaza. Fuel tankers were and continue to be permitted in. Wounded children and their families were evacuated for treatment. Field hospitals were established and continue to be established. And Israel completely halted all military activities. Israel asked for the daily release of 10 women and children held hostage, who were savagely taken from their homes and from a peace party. While we upheld our side of the agreement, even exceeded aid quotas, Hamas violated it, not once, but several times. 15 minutes after the pause began, Hamas fired a barrage of rockets into Israel. Throughout the following 8 days, Hamas carried out shooting attacks, detonated IEDs, and fired anti-tank missiles. Hamas violated the pause time and again while Israel abided by the pause. Hamas not only violated the agreement by attacking Israeli soldiers, they also violated the agreement regarding the release of hostages. They separated mothers from their children. They refused to release all women and children as agreed. Today, there are still 138 hostages being held in Gaza, and Hamas has not even allowed the Red Cross to visit them and provide their families with the most basic sign of life. This is an abhorrent war crime. Hamas ended the pause by refusing to abide by the terms of the hostages release agreement, and then proceeded to fire a barrage of rockets at Israeli towns and cities, targeting Israeli civilians yet again. Dear colleagues, how can it be that those who are now calling for a ceasefire are not demanding that Hamas immediately stop all terror activities? Why is it only now that you have woken up and not when Hamas caused the previous pause to collapse? If this council wants to see a ceasefire, start by demanding it from Hamas, the party that broke the past two. Why is this draft resolution not directed at Yihya Sinwar and Ismail Haniyeh? Why? Do you not know who was responsible for ending the previous ceasefire and reigniting hostilities? Distinguished council members, Hamas is solely responsible for the humanitarian situation on the ground, and they must be held fully accountable by the council. Hamas is committed to bringing death and destruction upon both Israeli and Gazans, whereas Israel is taking every possible effort to improve the situation for Gazans. It is a fact that some members of the council and the Secretary General refuse to come to terms with. Here are some other facts and figures. As of December 7th, in total, since the start of the war, over 3,500 aid trucks carrying humanitarian supplies have entered Gaza through the Rafah crossing. Over 70,000 tons of aid, including food, water, medical supplies, tents, beds, blankets, humanitarian equipment, and more, entered Gaza. Even now, in the midst of heavy fighting, Israel agreed to increase the amount of fuel entering Gaza, and yesterday the entry of 65 aid trucks was facilitated. But this number could have been much higher if the UN's capacity to accept more trucks permitted this. There are currently hundreds of aid trucks in a log jam waiting to enter Gaza after security inception. And the only reason they have not entered is because of the logistical difficulties of international organizations. Today, Israel accepts to screen 334 aid trucks, which means that each of these trucks will be ready to enter Gaza should international organizations be willing to accept them. Israel also facilitated the construction of two field hospitals, one run by the Kingdom of Jordan and the other by the UAE, to treat the uninvolved sick and injured. France, in coordination with Israel, has supplied a floating hospital that is treating Gazans in El Arish, and Italy is following suit. Saudi Arabia donated 21 additional ambulances. 5 other field hospitals are set to open soon to be run by the Red Cross, Egypt, the International Medical Corps, Turkey and Italy. 553 sick and injured have exited Gaza for treatment abroad, accompanied by 378 family members and guardians. This, dear friends, was all allowed and facilitated by Israel. In fact, Israel welcomes any and all humanitarian assistance to Gaza from any and all countries willing to assist. But colleagues, sadly, not all of this aid reaches its destination. In the previous days and weeks, we have seen footage from inside Gaza of Hamas terrorists literally shooting at Palestinians trying to gain access to basic humanitarian supplies. Gazans have reported that aid is being taken by Hamas and distributed exclusively to its terrorists. Boxes of humanitarian aid have been found in Hamas terror tunnels. So, if humanitarian supplies are not getting to where they should, point the finger at Hamas. Hamas is the genocidal terror organization that rules Gaza with an iron fist. Hamas violated the ceasefire on October 7th, and it was Hamas, not Israel, who violated the humanitarian pause. To Hamas, international humanitarian law holds no importance. When sitting in these meetings, it feels as if Hamas doesn't exist at all. It is always only about Israel. This is a distortion of reality and it is unacceptable. Hamas must be held accountable. Mr. President, today is the first day of the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, the Festival of Light. It is one of the Jewish holidays that celebrates the Jewish people overcoming attempts in each generation to destroy us. How world powers tried to deny our presence in our ancestral homeland, in Jerusalem, in the 2nd century BCE, before Jesus, before Muhammad. It is a holiday that celebrates how light prevailed over darkness. Today, sadly, we find ourselves again surrounded by darkness, with forces that seek to destroy us and also to demonize and delegitimize us. Jewish tradition teaches that even a little bit of light can dispel much darkness. Every one of you can use light to dispel the darkness and expose the truth. I pray that we see another Hanukkah miracle here in the UN, and that the Almighty will allow the truth and light to prevail here in this council. That we will see Hamas defeated soon, so that both Israelis and Gazans can live freely, free of violence and free of fear. Israel, Mr. President, will continue with her mission, the elimination of Hamas's terror capabilities and the return of all of the hostages. And we will complete our mission while supporting every humanitarian initiative to improve the situation for Gazans. Whoever truly seeks peace and security in the region must understand that the only way to achieve this is by destroying Hamas, not by calling for ceasefire, which will only extend the war and suffering of all. There is no other option. Thank you, Mr. President.